actually half Italian. And I was raised pretty much my whole life in Italy, went through Italian state school, and then came to the UK for the past sort of 3 or 4 years for uni, where I went to Cambridge and studied classics. And in terms of my education, it's pretty much, I'm quite eclectic. I've done, in Italy at school, you kind of take all subjects up to the very end, but my focus has always really been on humanities. That's kind of what lights me up a lot. And so again, it's quite unusual that I ended up sort of working in the tech industry after that. And at the moment, I'm on the founding team of a startup, Academy, and which is the last place I really imagined myself to be, because I always thought in terms of career, I'd need a bit more structure, a bit more stability. And what I've actually found is that what I like even more is to kind of create that structure and stability for myself, which is kind of what life is like in a startup, I'd say. And what we do at Academy in a nutshell, very briefly, is we try to accelerate early stage diverse thinkers into tech careers. And what I mean by that is we try and nurture young people at the start of their careers who come from, frankly, any background that isn't the traditional computer science background, with the hope not just to make them equivalent to computer scientists, but to nurture those qualities, right? That kind of diversity that they bring with them in terms of what they study and what they're interested in the hope to make them somewhat, even better. Yeah.
Yeah, that honestly sounds amazing. So just going back to your time at Cambridge, because I understand that it might be a little bit surprising. Like, why did you not decide to study computer science instead if you are interested in tech right now? So can you tell us a little bit about this choice and how studying classics potentially contributed to you still being able to work in the tech industry?
Sure. Well, what I would say to that is that I really firmly believe that what you study is not really indicative of the way your brain works. It's actually much more about what makes your heart beat, right? What you're passionate about. And to that point, I actually know a lot of people who perhaps, studied engineering or went through STEM routes, and they actually struggle far more than me in terms of coding and anything tech related. And in fact, despite sort of my passion for despite the fact that my allegiance lies in the humanities world, I have a very structured brain, and that really helps me play with technical ideas and really articulate my thoughts in terms of technically speaking. And it also helped me, in the past, it helps me really write very clean code and refactor it, which is essentially a very sort of fancy word to that means sort of structuring your code, organizing your code as best you can. And it's made me really, really quite good at communicating about code. So setting the big picture and providing context for the people in the audience who you're trying to communicate with, and not going down tangents, right, and rabbit holes, and really being able to strike the right balance between the high level and the minutiae, which is actually quite a hard skill to get the hang of. And that's kind of a skill that actually I've been practicing my whole life, and even throughout my degree. When you write an essay, these are all thoughts that get channeled, skills and thoughts that get channeled through that.
I see. But how did you know that you will enjoy coding, in a sense that, okay, you're at the university, you're studying classics, so where did the thought come from?
So I got involved quite a lot with Code4 Girls, actually. So during my university years, I was a great ambassador for them, their team, their mission, their community. Frankly, I was really quite drawn to that, and I got involved with all of their courses as a student. I was their campus ambassador at Cambridge. So I helped sort of organize all of their courses and organize more and more year on year. And eventually I kind of transitioned to teaching some of their courses I went through their fellowship program, which kind of introduces you in a very soft way into their instructor community. And I've been teaching those coding courses ever since. So some Python ones, SQL, and that was my introduction to the coding world, really, that community and that emphasis on it's not about, oh, I want a career in tech. I've diverted myself entirely and I'm marrying tech. It's about gaining that exposure, gaining a slight exposure, treading into it and just learning just enough to be able to be knowledgeable and be able to discuss stuff, but not to make it your whole life and be all and end all.
I see. And from our previous conversations, I know that you mentioned that at the end of your university, you actually managed to secure a graduate role within Accenture. So could you tell me a little bit about why you chose to go with Academy instead and kind of how the two compare according to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And as a caveat to my answer here, I would say that it was the hardest decision I've probably ever made. I still have a lot of respect for Accenture. I have great relationships with the team there. And I was really, really quite excited for a long time in my life about, and I felt really lucky. It's not something to shy away from the fact that you're able to say, oh, you have a job at the end of your degree. I felt extremely lucky and I felt extremely enthusiastic. But what I've come to realize is that as a graduate, it's quite savage. You're competing for these. It's really hard. You're competing for these milk round, graduate schemes, and just because you're a grad, right, and it's called graduate, and therefore it feels right. It feels like that's the only thing you can pursue. And at that stage in your life, you're not even sure what kind of job is right for you, right? And this really limits your options because it kind of buckets you into those industries, like consultancy, law, and finance that happen where companies are big enough to happen to be able to host this concept of a graduate scheme, right? And you really forget that there's much more to your career landscape, and that you're more specifically, because there's space for you to be unique and to shine a bit more and not to be bred the same as everyone else and treated, frankly, according to hierarchy. You're junior and therefore you do junior stuff. And sure, structure is, don't get me wrong, structure is necessary as organizations scale and get bigger, but I really found that actually it's a value in that you can have embedded in your company culture to be otherwise. And I really think that that's what we have here at Academy. It's it's all about don't go and be a clog in a wheel, but come here and be a hero instead. And when Academy came across me, it was I was used to doing all these interviews and assessment centers for all these big companies and these big programs, and I can never quite hack them. There's a technique for these kind of assessments, and with Academy it was just instantaneous. We clicked, there was chemistry, and they saw right through me, and they saw that I could have potential there. And it's a promise they make to you to kind of to go further and faster instead, right? Instead of just being slowly going up that hierarchy and being like everyone else. And it's kind of a question of to trust someone and give them responsibility, not whenever the company states is so, because that's the way it is, but whenever you're ready as an individual, and because that's frankly more beneficial for everyone. And I really think that at Academy we've built a whole company around that promise, really, and not just for our employees, right, but also in our product, right, in this 2-year program that we host, and which is all about, as I was kind of mentioning before, identifying high potential people and setting them up for high performance within tech, because that's where there's most opportunity, really, and there's the most need to be creative and fix a problem. But the kind of the core of it is that could be applied to any industry, right? That high potential people to high performance, career and fast track.
I see. And tell me a little bit more about kind of what your day-to-day job looks like at Academy now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, within Academy, I've done a bit of everything really. So, which is kind of what you do on a founding team. Nobody really has sort of specific roles for a while, and I've actually gone through the program itself. So I've trained as a software engineer, and we can get more into that later. But in terms of my typical day to day, I suppose is you know, what I do is you would have a bit of a mix, right? It's a crossover between a lot of ideation, because at this stage of a company, you really need to build the foundations of it, right? Think about the building blocks and really strategize and think about the future in high level, but also implementation, because again, at the stage the company is at, you actually need to get stuff done on the daily, right? And so it's a bit of a mix of that. So I kind of balance that and kind of try and create things from scratch, whilst also figuring out good working practices to go along, because I have no idea, right? I have no experience. I graduated a year ago, right? And I do have a super impressive team to turn to, who are really, really supportive and have different varying levels of experience, right? And we kind of complement each other that way. And as I said, there's no real hierarchical mentality, so to speak. And so basically, for all intents and purposes, I'm part of the management team in anything but name. And as I said, everyone has their own thing, but we all need to make stuff happen. And there's kind of none of that, in indefinite strategizing. But we're kind of, I find that as a team, we're of a very ruthlessly efficient breed. And most importantly, that they're my family, and I really do feel like that Academy is my home, and I have loads of fun along the way, where there's a high team spirit and high camaraderie, which just in general, abstracting from that, is kind of what I feel like is what I need as a work value wherever I end up working. This is something that I would want to translate across. I don't know if that kind of answers your question. I know there's not sort of a typical, but at least it kind of gives a sense of the components of a day-to-day, I suppose.
Yeah, no, for sure. You do a lot, and you do many different things, but I think it makes sense. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about the technical training that you underwent as part of the program itself.
Yeah. So I think I found it fascinating how fascinating I found it, as in, for someone like me that really, lights up about art and literature, and my dissertation on, classical influence on Renaissance paintings, I just really didn't get it, why I was actually enjoying it so much. But that's the thing, really, to kind of, build on what I was saying earlier, is you don't have to be passionate about something to find it extremely rewarding and fulfilling and interesting, and as a career, if I had to have a career in something more classics related, I don't think I would feel rewarded, fulfilled. I'd definitely be interested, but perhaps not rewarded and fulfilled. And I really feel that the tech industry there, to kind of really to play to the point of the whole purpose of this event, like, why would you get involved in the first place, right? It's a playing field. And so there's so much in tech for your brain to grapple with if you're more intellectual, right? And so much also for your imagination to build if say you're more on the creative side of things. And prior to this experience on the program, as I mentioned, I'd only had exposure to these kind of these Code First Girls courses, and those were kind of very specific. So it was one on Python, one on web development, and one on SQL, right? And this was the first time I actually was doing sort of full-time hardcore and really putting the big picture together, right? How all of these things actually fit together, and really doing a proper deep dive in every single one of them. And at the moment, and I feel almost kind of, my training ended about 3 months ago now, and I feel so far removed from it, because at Academy I'm doing all sorts and not really much technically speaking at the moment, but I do have the knowledge that I I know that the certainty, right, the confidence almost that I know that I will be able to go and pick that technical knowledge back up wherever I left off, right, anytime I like. And I think that's a mindset that a lot of people aren't able to quite put themselves in, that it's not this kind of full-on decision and commitment that you're making to tech. It's something that you can get exposed to and build over time and come back to, right, and flirt with a little bit. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, definitely does, especially that from what I heard, at least, it's that you still have to learn a lot on the job. So it doesn't matter what kind of technical training you undergo. Still, when you're working on a project, there's still so much more to learn. From the feeling of it, I think academy is also teaching people how to learn. And if you are able to come from a non-technical background and acquire these skills, then it shows that you have a lot of potential to basically learn anything else.
Absolutely. And it is something that you can come, as I was saying, that's the most important thing, that you can come back to. It's something that definitely you can try, whatever your background. And it's not a sort of a full-on, often people think, oh, if I want to work in tech, I need to commit to this, it's my passion, I need to commit to this full-on software engineering life. That's what it means to work in tech. And it's really not. It's much more varied, it's much more nuanced, and it's very much unique to yourself. It's, you don't have to be that stereotype, that traditional tech person. And the more you get to know yourself and your work values and what interests you, right, what lights you up, and the more you don't have to fit into a predefined picture, but you can kind of paint your own, if that makes sense.
For sure. But I'm sure there are a few challenges across the way. So when it comes to your personal experience, what are the main challenges you have faced? Maybe any unexpected challenges that you'd like to share?
For sure, yeah. So my experience with Academy is I've been given such free range and so much opportunity that when you're given that, it's like it's a huge gift, and it's just served to you on a golden platter. And you think it's at that stage everything's downhill, right? You'd think it's easy to say, right, this is what I'm going to go for, right? I'm going to carve it out, I'm going to grow in this role, and this is going to make my career. And actually it's so hard, because I don't have a clue what I want to do. I'm figuring out as I go along. That's why I keep doing all sorts of things within this role. And I've gone from sort of recruiting some of our scholars, to marketing and branding, to building our community, to thinking about strategizing about partnerships and the program itself, right? So sort of software engineering to an extent. So I've really been all over the place. And what I've actually discovered is, sure, it's extremely exciting and extremely valuable to build that range for yourself, but it's also really stressful sometimes, right? The other day I had to literally write my own job description for the first time, and I was like, oh my God, what role title do I even want? Like, what am I even going to call myself? Like, it's actually quite stressful. And for all the kind of the over planners out there, I am one of you, and it is hard to be put into that situation, but it's also okay. And it really plays to the point that you were just saying, Mary, that it's you don't have to box yourself into that tech position, right? So you can bide time and figure it out as you go along, and you just have to trust the process that something organically will ring a bell at some point. And tech for me is always on the back burner, right? I know I wanted that, I'm attracted to it, that it's really rewarding, but it's kind of like not right now, it doesn't feel right now, maybe later, right? There's different business needs right now, and my strengths and interests kind of overlap with them, so that's what I'm going to do now. But it's something I can come back to, and but that's definitely been a big challenge, an opportunity, but also a huge challenge, don't get me wrong. But what I've discovered as a result of kind of going through these cycles of like, I'm so happy that I have this freedom, and also I'm really scared, I don't know where I'm going with this, that's actually okay. And I've grown. That's where you find a lot of growth, really.
For sure, for sure. It sounds challenging and very rewarding. And of course, what you guys are doing is simply incredible. Basically helping others break into the industry as well. Okay, so these are basically all the questions I had. Also, for the sake of time, I think I'd like to open the floor to anyone who has any questions. Of course, if you guys don't have questions right now, you can always message Olivia later, or just contact the academy team if you're interested in the program and undergoing the program yourself. So maybe I'll just let Olivia just say the final words. What would you like to conclude with?
I don't know. I suppose like my favorite, I don't know, maybe like my what excites me about, like, my favorite aspect perhaps of like working in tech, and I really think that it kind of summarizes a lot of what I've been saying until now, is I really find it enthusiastic how open-ended the impact we can make at the moment is within this industry. It's such an almost a clean slate for, and it sets itself up for people to come in and revolutionize it so much. And it really provides that opportunity, as I was saying before, kind of when you're looking to, don't go be a clog in a wheel, but come here and be a hero. It really provides that opportunity to be a hero for a lot of people. So yeah, I suppose that's a good enough note to conclude on.
Definitely. So thank you so much, Olivia, for sharing your experience of working within that field and how you broke into it yourself. So next up we have Harrison. So Harrison, I'm going to actually let you take the lead on your part. So you can take this time, let's say 20 minutes roughly. So just to leave time for questions. But yeah, you have all of control and take the stage.
Okay. I'm sure I won't need 20 minutes. I'm certainly not that interesting. And jump in if I'm unclear anywhere. I guess I have somewhat of a different story to Olivia in terms of tech and break into tech, and I'll try and talk a bit about with regard to my experience, and then hopefully that'll inform an answer to the sort of first question of should you break into tech, which certainly yes you should. So I'm currently at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm obviously from the UK. I'm studying here history, and the US is slightly different just in terms of an education system, because you have to study a whole range of subjects. And I've spent some time here studying computer science, studying maths and sciences and English and all sorts of things. And I think it's already frankly a better system, because it really prepares you a little bit better to adapt in the future. But I got into tech before I got to Yale. I actually took a gap year after I finished school in the UK, and I had like zero technical experience. Literally, I'd done a summer school like at Cambridge in the summer after I finished school, like learning to code a bit, but it was nothing serious. And I didn't really have any plans. I got into university and sent my sort of resume out to some friends who did recruitment, and just by chance, this friend of mine was working in an office next to a company called Railsbank, and they were like 3 people at the time, and she was sort of doing part-time work, and shared my CV with them, and they were interested in at least having a conversation with me, because the product, which is essentially a banking API to embed banking and financial services products into your apps and businesses was just getting off the ground, and they had zero testing and QA, quality assurance testing capacity is probably the right word. So anyway, in terms of how you break into tech, this is probably not the most inclusive or best practice, but I just sort of claimed in the interview that I could code and decided to figure out on the job. And I was given the job and spent the next month trying to figure out what a tool called Postman is, which is like testing, like QA UI is probably the best way to put it. And I built out sort of the testing suite for Railsbank. I was the 7th employee, and similar to Olivia probably now, I was doing everything from QA to building cabinets in our sort of office and moving offices and so on. It was an amazing experience because the essence of startups is in those first couple of years, and I spent a lot of time with the founding team, just sort of building out the foundations of everything that is now, you know, a 400 person you know, company that just raised like $17 million. I was there. Well, I still working at Railsbank. I built off of the in answer, probably a sort of initial answer to the question of like why you should get into tech is because it's the best foundation to then do other stuff from, because it builds such a first principles understanding of different organizations and creative processes. So I built off of doing sort of QA and tests to doing customer support, customer success, some sort of sales related stuff, and also writing. This is sort of my first, I guess, foray into product writing, like documentation for our product. Most of which is just still there today, and I just did it like because I thought it was necessary. Came out here to Yale, studying computer science, studying history. Computer science education is sort of somewhat broken, and that's why I think what Olivia and Weimar and so on are building at Academy is really exciting, because I think to break into tech, you really need to sort of experience the process of building something in real life, to understand sort of the power of what you're doing, rather than just sort of doing problem sets at 2 a.m. with no help. Tech in general is like incredibly collaborative, which is why it's very fun and creative, rather than just sort of problem solving. That being said, a sort of technical education is also very powerful to doing well in tech, because it teaches you some sort of thinking principles that are really helpful in developing cool products. Anyhow, I've been working at Railsbank while at Yale, doing all sorts of stuff, and I got involved with Project Access nearly 2 years ago. My friend launched the Yale campus team here. Did the campus team stuff for a while, but I've always been just my experience with Railsbank has informed sort of more of an interest in product, and in sort of establishing longer term solutions to big problems, and in talking to people about those problems and understanding them. So I shifted around this time last year to doing product in Project Access and really building that side of the team out. Unlike Olivia, I wasn't exactly building teams at Railsbank. There was far more competent people to do that for me. But here at Project Access, I've tried to use some of that experience of watching people do that very well to build out the product and engineering team, you know, from sort of scratch to, I think we're around 30 or so people now. And that's been really interesting because, you know, just as when you're building a product is collaborative and creative, it's exactly the same when you're building teams and to sort of do that at a meta level. I'm 10 minutes in and I talk a lot. I've been doing that the past year. Last year in about March, when COVID happened, I was at home, and I was brought into a sort of more formally product role at Railsbank as we were scaling to run product roadmap. So what that meant in terms of like a day-to-day job was working with product teams in Singapore and Lithuania and in the US to coordinate everything we were building and plan it out, not in a sort of waterfall, like this is what we're going to do each day mentality, but just in a delivery to our customers and a partnership with our customers mentality, and really build processes such that we were consuming customer problems really effectively and prioritizing them and delivering sort of the most impactful solutions we could. That was and is what I'm still doing is a ton of fun. You know, what I like about products. Olivia spoke a little bit about Accenture. I have never had the misfortune of working in a consultancy, but what I like about product is that you have to think about things so long term and tech in general. So you're trying to solve problems that are usually so big and so long term that you have to sort of simultaneously live in the present, solve problems in the present, and live, you know, anywhere from 3 to sort of 12 months or a couple of years into the future with your vision. And I think that is a really powerful skill to develop if you then want to start your own thing. So the last thing I'll probably say about myself and my experience and tech in general is I have like built upon my Railsbank experience to start working in venture capital and investing. So this summer I've been working in a fintech focused venture capital fund in New York, and that's been a ton of fun to try and build out a niche in terms of products, because let me tell you, like when everyone else has done an MBA and worked as an investment banker for 3 years, you can be a little bit different if you've actually built things. And that's been extremely powerful as sort of a validation to me about why people should get into tech. And I think I'll probably speak a little bit about that now for a few minutes. So like in terms of why you should get into tech, I'm looking at the participants, seeing if anyone's just left because they're just bored. In terms of why you should get into tech, put simply, if you want to solve big problems, or if you want to have wealth such that not just for a material sense, but in my belief, sort of, I guess this is nothing original, and maybe it's a naive, but I really believe like having wealth is a sort of route to freedom. And I can't believe I just said that sort of on a recorded video, but being able to make money while you sleep, if you want to do that, you have to really you have to own something. And if you want to do it at scale, tech is the best way to do it, because tech gives you more leverage than any other career. So if you're you know, if all you can do is like make PowerPoints and stuff, you have very little leverage. But with code, with code and the internet, you sort of have infinite leverage to impact people and solve people's problems at scale and be paid to do that, and do that all over the world. I think we're transitioning towards like a world where there aren't so much tech hubs in different cities and so on, but really a tech hub in the cloud, and you can live wherever you like, work however much you like, and own your work rather than renting out your time, and really have a lot more freedom than many of our peers. That's probably a bit wishy-washy and a short and not very well articulated answer, but maybe the more interesting thing from building off of that in terms of like how you can break into tech, which I don't think people address enough, is to do something a little bit similar to what I did, and that is join a pre-seed or seed stage tech startup. Often people think about breaking into tech and they think about going to work at Google or Facebook, or you know, joining like a really high-flying private startup, and that is certainly great if you can get that job. But often they're looking for real technical minds. On the other hand, startups who have like 4 people and have just raised some money are looking for help wherever they can get, and get it, and a little bit more creativity, and I think a willingness to learn. You can literally go onto Crunchbase, which is like a big database of startups and their funding, pull up the industry you're probably interested in, I don't know, ed tech, and recent funding rounds, and filter for like pre-seed, seed, and maybe Series A. These companies will have, you know, anywhere from 10 to 50 people, and, you know, find a few and just email them, looking for experience and access into technology, because sure, you will probably have to do a lot of sort of repetitive work, but you'll really learn and be part of this incredibly fast-paced environment in which you can build your career off of. That's I think something I guess I wanted to highlight, because not many people talk about it, and it's a little bit easier, I think, to break into tech than people realize. Let me leave it there, and see if you have any questions, Murray.
Thanks. I think that was quite comprehensive, the story you just gave. I guess I have a few questions. By the way, guys, if anyone's watching and has a question, now is the perfect time to ask. But I'll just let's say take the initiative first. So my first question is, when you start working in a startup, or let's say a tech field, but you don't have a tech experience yourself, how do you like actually start taking on technical tasks and make sure that people trust you with them? Because I know that I had actually experienced working at a tech startup myself last summer, and I think it was a little bit difficult, is that, at least in my startup, the tasks were quite strictly distributed. So I was just wondering how you found that.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's such a really good question, because there was like, for instance, another guy at Rails Bank when I started, who was an intern, and he was interning sort of specifically in like more of an operations role, and our pathways have really just sort of diverged since then. So where you start is important. It's difficult for people to trust you to do coding if you have never coded before, and they are running around trying to run an entire business and perhaps don't have the time to teach you. There are plenty of sites and places like Academy Online that you can go through for 4 to 6 weeks and really learn how to build things and get a base level of experience from which you can sort of work your way into something of a tech role. It's important to be clear when you join the startup that, you know, these broadly sort of startups, especially at the early stage, are split into product and sort of sales. And it's important to be clear which side you want to go on, because if you start on sales, that's totally fine, but you are going to do sales. And if you start on product, you will do product. Product is as well a good route to get into tech. Often people get into product from software engineering, but in my experience, product is fundamentally about communication rather than about actually building stuff yourself. I tend to prefer to leave people who are trained to do engineering to solve problems and be engineers, and try and help them understand those problems and communicate with people. So, like, my advice, people who who don't have so much training, perhaps in software engineering or coding, is probably twofold. Firstly, train yourself. There are plenty of resources online, and the beauty of coding is that you can learn it and build stuff for yourself. There are plenty of also sort of online courses from universities too. Harvard's sort of CS50 course is a very famous one here. And then take that experience and perhaps don't try it and initially be a software engineer, but use your understanding of software engineering and then do product. And if you want to do software engineering, you can work from there, but product is where you're going to find perhaps the best place for your mind and what you're looking for. There are people who like just want to do coding, and usually those people will have taught themselves to code if they haven't been taught to code. Most people who want to get into tech, I think, would be best fitted into products where they can leverage their sort of humanities education or arts education in a sort of creative, collaborative, communicative role.
I see. But you mentioned that you truly do a lot at university, from working part-time to project access to being a Yale student to sports. So how do you manage your time to ensure that you can still actually upskill yourself in tech?
That's a good question. I think the last part is a really good question about upskilling yourself. I don't manage my time that well, and often I find myself struggling to balance different opportunities. That being said, like I do believe that like I've had a lot of amazing luck and fortune, and I should sort of work extremely hard to make the most of it. The upskilling part, you will find, I think, that working in the tech startup, especially in something of a, everyone in an early tech startup sort of has a leadership position, as Olivia was saying, and you'll find that you learn more, not just technically, but also sort of in an emotional, intelligence side of things, working in one of these startups. Then for like 2 years, then you'll learn for like in 5 or 10 years or ever, frankly, because it's just a different culture in a sort of corporate environment. So the areas I'm looking to upskill, I find I upskill continually in my sort of day-to-day, and I'm really trying to use my education to inform some of the skills I'm looking to develop in terms of product. So like I'm quite honestly consciously studying history, because I like to do product, and I like to do product in the sense of trying to perceive problems and then trends and how, what the next solution might be to sort of longer term problems. And in essence, that's often what history is teaching you to do. So yeah, I mean, that's I don't know if that answers the question very well, but the other side of things is like, in terms of, yeah, even in terms of upskilling into like, or like, I don't know if upskilling is the right word, or like cross-skilling into something different. You will do that in an early stage startup much more than you would at a late stage startup, because at a late stage startup, you will have one role and you will do it. In an early stage startup, you will have multiple, and you will be able to take on different tasks as the startup grows and scales, and upskill pretty easily.
I see, and that makes sense. Okay, so I don't have any questions myself. If anyone in the audience has any questions, or any of our panelists have a question, then now is the right time.
Actually, I do have a question. So one thing I've often heard, so I mean, I think your tip regarding trying out different websites and different courses to learn how to code is a very good one. and one that I'm trying to do myself over the summer. But one thing I've also heard is that a lot of people say the best way to demonstrate your interest to potential employers is some kind of projects. So what are these projects, and what is a good way to get started on a project? And
Well,
is it yeah, go ahead.
there's this really good project. It's called Project Access that you can work on anytime, and we always need people to help with. And just ping me an email if you would like to get involved in Project Access. But other than that, the best projects I think are the ones that you can speak to because you just did them for fun rather than for any instrumental reason. I know that's a bit of a I'm sort of avoiding answering the question, but that's the right answer. For instance, in the sense like I called a kid who is very much pursuing a technical education from my high school who wants to go to sort of MIT, and I asked him, what's your he wants to study physics and computer science. I said, what do you do in your spare time? Like, what do you like to do? And he said, well, I like to rebuild like 80 systems and games. Like, he's 17 years old. That might not be for everyone, but he's just doing that because he's interested in it, because that's what he likes. I think the other cool thing you can do, especially perhaps maybe an interesting thought for this sort of project thing, is companies like to see projects, but I think I rarely have seen this, but like what I would especially like to see is projects if you're working at some sort of tech startup that leverage their technology. So if you wanted to work at Railsbank, for instance, and you used the Railsbank sort of sandbox, which is like free, to build some proto banking app as if you were like doing a hackathon. By the way, hackathon's also a great thing to do for experience and projects. And came to them, and not only have you done a project, but you've also used their technology, so you already understand it. You're like way above everyone else. So similarly, if you want to go work for, there are a lot of sort of these infrastructure platform businesses that I think are really cool, because again, as I was saying, with regards to sort of leverage, they're building like roads while everyone else is building cars, and you can just use them or pull them all together to build something pretty cool for yourself, and demonstrate not only an understanding of the technical skills required to do the job, but also their product and what they're selling in their business.
Thank you for that. That was that makes a lot of sense, especially Project Access. I would recommend that to any other attendees as well.
No, I mean, Project Access, I was half joking, but Project Access is a great place to learn and develop as a sort of in any area you're interested
in. Okay, so with that being said, I think we can move on to another speaker who's also part of Project Access, Rebecca. So Arian, I'll let you take the lead on the interview part, and I'll let Rebecca take the stage.
Yeah, hello everyone. 1 second. Yes. Well, thank you. So yeah, so hello Rebecca. I think the best way to start would be if you just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you do at Project Access, and what roles you've been taking on, and yeah.
Sure, thank you. I'm very excited to be here, by the way. This is an amazing event. And yeah, so I'm Rebecca, and I wear many hats, it seems, this year. So I'm actually working at PA under Harrison in product. And I'm a US program officer at PA, which is amazing. I just joined a couple months ago, and very excited to work at Project Access, such a fulfilling and rewarding place to be. But on the side as well, I'm also an inside sales intern at Dell Technologies. This is my position for this summer. And I'm also founder and CEO of my nonprofit organization, TechPeer.
Okay, yes, that is very exciting. So how about you tell us a little bit? Let's first talk about maybe the startup that you're a co-founder for, because that sounds very exciting and very unique. So can you tell us a little bit more about what TechPeer is and what you're trying to build there?
Of course. So it started around a couple of years ago when we really found that there was this huge disconnect from the way that the older generation and the younger generation really communicate. So we wanted to bridge that gap and really make sure that technology played a role in educating the older generation in being able to communicate with younger generation, not feel that disconnect and not feel so isolated. And what we did is we devised a program and approached various retirement homes in Toronto, and then that later expanded to some other provinces in Canada. And we devised this curriculum to teach seniors from maybe their technology levels are like beginners to advanced, how to really communicate using technology and leveraging all of what technology has to offer, and really just exploring that world of tech. From like I said, from the beginner aspect of how to really create a Gmail account to intermediate, how to like play certain technological games or advanced. And we haven't actually moved into advanced yet, so I don't know how that curriculum is going to look like, but I work with an amazing team that does help me devise this. And when I say I'm like the brains of the operation, I really do mean that. Like I do the operational kind of things, but when it comes to the technological side of things, I'm not quite competent yet. So I actually learn a lot from my team. And in terms of actually working in tech, I work with the more, I want to say softer, less technical spheres in the tech field. So I work a lot with how sales and marketing really factors into the tech world, and what I can do creatively to boost a few things. And yeah, that's just kind of my role.
Yeah, that actually sounds very interesting, especially because you're coming at it from a very different field, and that gives me a lot of questions. But the first question that I have is, considering you're the CEO, right, and you're managing a few people, like you said, you wouldn't really exactly understand what they're doing. How exactly do you manage someone for skills you don't necessarily have? Like how does that go about?
Oh, for sure. And that's an excellent question, because, I really don't know what they do. So it really does involve being an active listener, willingness to learn. You really do have to take a lot of Zoom calls, get down to the specifics, get down to the details, have them walk you through a few aspects, and really try to understand what they've been doing, what they're competent in, and try to learn as well on the side. So I've picked up quite a few skills and from them, and I'm so happy that I did. I think it also not only makes me a better candidate for things I want to do in the tech sphere going forward, but it really allows me to keep learning and growing as an individual, which I love doing on a daily basis anyway. So that's been amazing too.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So my next question might sound a little bit rude, but I think it gets across the point that that a lot of people might have, which is that at the end of the day, you're not doing a tech role, right? So you're doing an operations role. You were a sales intern at Dell as well. So how do you know that you're interested in technology? Aren't you just interested in marketing, sales, organizations? So that should be a good fit for any company. So what is it about tech that specifically attracts you, despite the fact you don't necessarily have the skills required to, I don't know, code websites or whatever?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not a rude question at all, but it's quite a necessary one, I would say. It's funny really, because my father, he's an engineer. So he is quite adept at this whole technological software, like coding. He does all of that. And actually my brother started coding too, but none of it transferred over to me. But it's funny how that happened, of course. But I think for me personally, what kind of excites me about tech is that it's kind of like what Olivia said, and I really do want to echo that statement, that it's really this playground that you can explore, and you can kind of mold it into what you want and what you're looking to get out of it. And I think as long as you have that drive, that willingness to learn, and you do want to explore all of what it has to offer, you will succeed. So for me, it's not necessarily coding. I don't think I will ever get that far, although I do want to learn. I just think that, for me, it's kind of meshing the spheres that I love and that I'm passionate about with the world of tech and like this excited, unexpected, dynamic, and fast-paced environment that really does attract me more than anything else.
Okay, that is a very good answer, and that makes a lot of sense as well. Attracts me towards tech. The fact that it's a fast-paced environment, so many changes happening all the time. Everyone wants to work in tech, henceforth. But yeah, that all sounds good. Can you tell us a little bit more about then your role at Dell? So what as a sales representative do you call up consumers? Do you call up businesses? And what kind of products are you selling? Is it just laptops? Is it?
Yeah, so, you know, it's quite a misleading title, actually. It's none of what you described, although I will say, so when I first got into the job, the US interns and Canada interns at Dell Technologies actually both have the same titles, inside sales interns. And it's interesting because the US inside sales interns actually do everything of what you just said. They do sell the products to small businesses and medium businesses. They don't quite go to enterprise yet. That's a whole different ball game, but that's kind of the 3 tiers of which the company kind of breaks it up in that sense. But the Canadian interns, we get to work alongside the executives and really develop this one project that they work on. So my direct boss is actually the VP of Central and Eastern Canadian sales. And another boss of mine is the SVP of all of Canadian sales. And what I'm helping them on is really this social selling project. So like I said, again, those non-technical tech spheres, right? So what we're essentially revolutionizing the way that sales is conducted at Dell Technologies, and going forward, utilizing and leveraging tech to our fullest abilities. So I can't quite speak too much on how they are planning to do that. I'm quite bound by a certain confidentiality clause. But what I can say is that we're working on the social selling to really bring about awareness of how the business landscape has shifted from the old sales model, which mainly centered on cold calling and stuff of what people are still doing. And we're not trying to eliminate that whatsoever. But what we're trying to do is really enhance and highlight how social media will play a role going forward, and how COVID has kind of highlighted that as well for us too.
Can one argue it's essentially the Google ads for businesses? So is that what you're roughly suggesting?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I think you cut out a little on my end.
No, something is what you're talking about. I know you can't say much, but is it like Google ads for businesses? So like Google ads is a revolutionary way to do advertisements to consumers, but this is directed towards businesses.
No, actually, so I mean, yes, I know that's kind of been the conversation going around too, but no, we're focusing on how to best do sales to consumers while not eliminating that face-to-face aspect. And because when you do cold calling, essentially you get to that point where you do meet face-to-face with the client before it used to be physically, right? But so what we're exploring with social selling is more so how can you connect with the consumer in a different way, not via cold calling, but via social media. Because I'll give you some interesting stats. You know, Forbes has recently said that 97% of people actually view their products online, and 47% of buyers are looking at 3 to 5 pieces of content before making any purchasing decisions. So it really does show that you don't need to be cold calling them. They just need to have this online presence and see your online presence to be able to buy into what you're trying to sell them. So we're trying to kind of navigate our way around there and try to find a more streamlined way to do this.
Yeah, that all sounds very good and exciting. Changing the way e-commerce and sales are done is always very exciting and sounds very techy. But let us talk a little bit more about how you got that role in the first place. So what strategy did you choose? Did you just apply? Was it like any other job? Was there anything special about applying to Dell specifically? Anything they love to talk about?
Sure. Actually, it's an interesting story because I mean, I don't want to discourage anyone, but like my father worked at Dell, so I had a little bit of a inside help there. But no, like everyone, you guys shouldn't be discouraged whatsoever. They do take people not out of nepotism as well. So yeah, no, it's interesting because I first applied for a marketing role in the US directly. And I made it to the interview stage. Very grueling interview. That was quite a hard one to pass, and so I didn't get that role, and I was shortlisted, but I didn't end up going through. And then what happened was a recruiter on the Canadian side saw my resume, and they're like, okay, you'll be a great fit for what Canada is trying to accomplish for this summer. So like I said, they're really getting people to work with the executives on certain projects, and I guess my skills were just a better fit there. And then they called me. They're like, we'd like you to apply for this role. And I, of course, said yes. It's a brilliant company to work at, and their culture is amazing. And I've had a little bit of exposure into that because my father worked there. And through there as well, I made so many great connections that I really allowed me to understand what the company was all about. And that helps as well in the application process. So if you don't have sort of that inside view through another employee, I would definitely say research as much about the company as you can before applying, before interviewing. That'll really help you get your point across as to why you want to work there. But then, I had this short interview with the SVP, who's now my boss, and it was 5 minutes interview, guys, 2 questions. It was really strange. I honestly didn't know what the job was at the end before my first week, so that was quite interesting as well. But yeah, 5 minutes, 2 questions. Why do you want to work in sales, and why do you want to work at Dell? And I guess that answer must have convinced him, because I got the job a week later. And I was very happy to have gotten the position that I did. It's an amazing company, and everyone is just so collaborative and so friendly, and you'll love working there.
That is a very good sales pitch. So we see that you're interested in sales. You're selling the company very well as well. What would you say is it that makes Dell unique compared to the other tech companies? So, for example, right now I'm actually interning with Amazon, and they have a huge culture of taking ownership. They say, just if you have an idea, just go out there, message anyone, implement it. They have these leadership principles they love to talk about, and like whenever you're applying, they're like, oh, just mention these 3 leadership principles. It should be relatively easy. So yeah, what is it about Dell's culture that really attracts you, and what would you say to a prospective employee? Like, this is why you should apply to Dell over, say, any other tech company.
Sure. And it's interesting that you bring that up too, because we were recently on this huge call internally, and we were discussing, why is Dell culture so amazing, and how does it compare to everyone else in the industry, and why should people work there? So this is perfect. But really, it's kind of what you said as well, taking ownership of your projects, what you're pitching, and what you're putting out there as well. But I would say also it's the independence that they give us. And normally, at least from my professional experience elsewhere, you don't see too many interns getting so much independence and really being able to work on the project the way that you see fit, and kind of take it in the direction where you see that it should be going. And that's something that really surprised me. I mean, we have this 9 to 5 kind of hour set that we work across, but we don't actually end up working the 9 to 5. We end up working, I'd say, like that genuine work on that project. If you are working hard, I would say probably 3 to 4 hours, and the rest of the time you're trying to learn more about the company. They really allow you to kind of connect with people, network with people, and they trust you to know that you're doing the work. They don't check up on you every second of the day. They really have these one-on-one meetings with you, but they really trust you to get your project from start to finish on your own, sort of getting advice from other executives, getting advice from other employees, and finding your own place within what you're doing as well.
That makes a lot of sense. So thanks a lot for telling us that. What was it like to know the kind of products that they're selling? So did you have to go through a specific process to know a little bit more about that? So for example, if you're for example, a lot of people who are working in cloud, they have to do special certification courses to know a lot about how the cloud business works. It's a very different business, to be fair, and know about the different products that offer. If you go to, for example, Google Clouds or AWS's website, like you'll see like 70 products. If you're a regular consumer, you wouldn't really understand anything, which is why you need a sales specialist to help you. So what kind of training did you go through, or what was the process like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I don't actually sell anything. So if I was selling things, so kind of putting myself from the perspective of a US intern here, they do have, what Dell does offer is this 3 to 6 week training. So they do modify it summer to summer, but 3 to 6 week training on all of their products, on literally all of their services, how to sort of call a client, how to deal with a client, and in SB and MB, so small business and medium business. But they really do get down to all the details, and it's quite a comprehensive and tough training. I've heard from some of the US interns. I did not go through any of that. If I work there next summer, I do want to work in perhaps the US kind of side of things to really get that training. But what Canada does is quite cool as well, because they tell you to get certified in certain areas as well. Like they do send you a few courses that will benefit you, but it's not really directly to what I'm doing. So I can't say that I've had the same experience as what one might have had if they were a US intern in that case.
That makes sense. And then my final question for you would be, what exactly are your future plans? So how are you thinking, where do you think this internship will help you go? And also, tangentially, what do you see for the future for TechPeer? Because again, that sounds like an amazing project, and would love to know more about like what your goal is and what you're thinking of doing. And yeah, and what is it like to help people who are actually technically disadvantaged?
Oh, I think you muted yourself for that last part, but that's okay. I got the gist of it. I mean, if you want to finish up there, but yeah.
I just said, what is it like to help people who are technically disadvantaged?
Oh yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad you asked. So I want to go into the law, but specifically, sort of, I want to go into digital law and IP, intellectual property. So using all of my contacts at Dell and using all of that knowledge that I've gained from working at Dell will really allow me to do that. And I want to eventually come back once I get my law degree and come back and work as their in-house counsel, which I've already spoken to a person who is their head of legal and their in-house counsel. And, you know, I've kind of found out what she does on a day-to-day basis and what her job looks like. And it sounds very interesting. So further solidified that this is what I want to do. But yeah, that's what I hope to come back to later on. And I do hope to work at Dell in the meantime, in a variety of roles, so I can better be acquainted with the products, with how the company functions in like I said, a variety of roles to gain that overarching understanding. But as for TechPeer, I mean, I have high hopes for this organization. Right now, we're kind of taking a little bit of a step back and trying to figure out what we're going to do going forward and what that looks like for us. And we're currently working on some exciting new partnerships and new programs that we're planning to introduce very soon. But I think I do want to see this being implemented on a more of a national scale and eventually maybe hopefully on a global scale as well, because I think that it's very important that you know, seniors feel less isolated, feel less the feeling that they can get from being not connected to other people just because of that technical disadvantage that they have. That is something that we can easily help them with our knowledge and just being born into this social world that we are in. So I'm looking forward to kind of bridging that gap.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's something, if you ever expand to India, do let me know, because that's something my parents would appreciate as well. Some people who struggle with tech every day, and then they just call me up and they're like, how do I do this? How do I do that? But yeah, thank you so much for your perspective, Rebecca, and best of luck for the future. Hopefully we see you as a lawyer for Dell very soon. It's actually a very interesting field, I think, especially law for tech companies, just because, you know, a lot of antitrust cases are coming up and
Yes.
a lot of interesting developments happening there. But I guess that's all the time we have for now, unless any of the other panelists have a question for Rebecca. Yeah, thank you so much for joining then. I will give the floor back to Mary now.
Great, thank you. So I think we can actually end a little bit earlier, just because this is just the beginning of the entire Breaking into Tech event. We have lots more speakers coming up tomorrow, Tomorrow the event is going to be a little bit longer for the 2 hours, just because we have so many speakers that we got requests to prolong it. So I'll just end on inviting you all to join us tomorrow as well. It's a little bit of a different perspective. We have someone who's working as a data scientist at Amazon, someone who's a global accounts manager at a Danish tech startup, and lots more people coming up. So yeah, thanks everyone for the event, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Bye.